Morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Warm welcome. Thank you so much for coming on this rather miserable day. Really grateful for your being here. I'm Sean Nolan, Chair of Sussex Partnership Foundation. And yeah, a great warm welcome to our annual general meeting. Thank you so much for sparing the time. It probably, I just need to go through a few housekeeping. And actually, the housekeeping will take care of declarations of interests and the minutes of the previous year's meeting. So in terms of housekeeping, there are no drills, no fire drills or any other drills planned today. So if we do get something, we'll leave. And there'll be plenty of staff here for you to follow. Need to let you know that today's meeting is being filmed. It's live streaming. But so as you know, the camera's pointing to the podium. You ask a question later on in the event, then that'll come out. The voters will come out for your question, which you won't be filmed, which is probably worth you knowing. And there are some formal parts that I need to take care of, and one of which is apologies. And it's, you know, standing room only. It's very nice to see you all, but there are inevitably some apologies. We've got a large group of wonderful committee governors, and they can't all make it. So we got some of our couple of our non-executive directors and executives, Peter Aiken, Simon Litton, and our governors, Jonathan Farrar and Catherine and Sarah Payne, send their apologies. We don't have any declarations of interest posted. So we're taking that as read, and we have made the minutes of the last year's meeting made available to you. I mean, the main part of today, the formal aspect of today, is to present our annual report and accounts to our Council of Governors at a meeting in public, which is what we have now. And welcome to those people that are coming in on live stream and being part of our meeting virtually. There's also an opportunity to thank you. In public to our Council of Governors, our staff, our service users, our partners. Big shout out to the voluntary, the BSSE, voluntary social enterprise community. We work so well with partners, and we're going to need to work well with our partners, step that up a bit as we go through the years. But a big thank you, and it's a real passionate thank you to our governors in particular, because we've been working with the Council of Governors to improve our relationship so we can get even better outcomes while working with you. But also the staff, I've had a privilege of going to a number of visits, both the inpatient units, forensic services and community services. And I don't know whether it's because Jane and others send me to the services that I need to see, but I mean, so impressed. I see some brilliant values, compassion, people looking after each other, innovation, evidence of research, development, empowerment. It's just been a privilege, and I'm sure that will continue. So thank you very much to all those that I mentioned. Particular thank you to our staff. You know, it's a difficult time in the NHS at the moment, and the main reason for that, of course, is there's no money. So we've had years of investment into mental health, and we've had some benefits of that. It's a bit tight at the moment. I have to say we're doing pretty well with that despite, and we're also transforming our services, improving quality, which is a testament to an excellent executive team led by Jane Pavmore. Just a shout out to our system as well, our integrated care system. We work very well, very closely within our system. Stephen Lightfoot, Senator Apologies, the chair of the ICB, I work very closely with him. And I think, you know, it's a great opportunity for us to have the benefits of working closer with primary care, our acute colleagues and our community colleagues. And again, the voluntary community sector is so important to us. And really the system is a vehicle for us to enhance our working with the voluntary sector. So because we want to make this a stimulating, exciting, interesting meeting, we're not just going to talk about the accounts. Our chief finance officer would want to talk about we have got So obviously we'll pass on to Jane in a minute, who'll talk us through what's been happening over the last year, review of the year, because that's what we're doing really here. We're reviewing the last year, but also a glimpse of the future. And then Dr. Colin Hicks, who covers our strategy, one of our executive directors, he'll be talking us through our new strategy, which is really quite exciting and be really good for you to hear about that. And then, of course, the annual reports and accounts. But we are having two showcases. One on housing. I'm very pleased that it was my national job at the Chief Executive of the NHS Confederation Mental Health Network. We were having a big focus around housing and mental health. And it's something I've talked about going around to see the units and are medically or clinically fit for discharge, people ready to go into the community, ready to go out. And I see some nods here. We all know about this. We just got to get a lot better with that. Housing is one of the ingredients of that. And I know we've got some housing partners in the room, which is fantastic. And we're doing some leadership on that. We'll hear about that. And then transforming care and our autism team. Absolutely brilliant. Actually, I haven't heard you speak yet, so I'm really looking forward to that. And then we're going to have a quick update on the Council of Governors, and then you'll have a chance of questions and answers. And I think the executive team will come up and help me answer the questions. Thank goodness for that. So if I can, I think I've covered every formal thing I need to. I've got the nod there. Can I ask Jane to come and join us? Thank you.
Nice to see you all. Let me just get the clicker in the right place. It does work. There you go. Got to remember to do the left click. I always think it's a challenge at this time of year when you come to the AGM, because you're quite a few months into the new year and you're on to the next thing. But this is a really good opportunity to just pause and reflect on what we've achieved and what's happened over the preceding year. And I was at a sort of a coaching event on Friday, and they said you've got to be like a pro. You've got to pause, reflect, and then I can't remember what the O was. Organise. And I thought, oh, that's what I'm doing on Monday. I'm pausing and reflecting, and then thinking about the year to come. I think it's important for me to note, and thank Sean for his introduction, this reporting period of 23-24 is when Peter Molyneux was the chair and Joe Larby was the deputy chair. And I just want to acknowledge that and thank them for their support over the year and their leadership over that year, and their support of the executive team. 23-24 was the fourth year of the delivery of the Trust strategy, where we're aiming to improve the quality of lives for the communities that we serve. And I believe that we've made steps in the right direction. You'll hear in a bit, as Sean said, from Colin over there, about our 5-year strategy that we're developing for the next 5 years. But I think this is a time that over the 23-24 year period, we really paused and reflect on how we were getting on with this strategy and what we need to do to end that well and have it as the launch pad for the next strategy. As we begin at the beginning of this reporting year, so at the beginning of 23, we covered services in Sussex and in Hampshire, and then we had the provider collaborative as well. And over the year, we stopped providing the services in Hampshire, and we said goodbye to some wonderful colleagues in Hampshire as they moved over to Southern Health. And I was really sad to see them go, but I think it was the right thing to do, because I think as an organisation we need to, in line with the Health and Care Act, we need to become an integrated partner delivering in Sussex, and then for our provider collaborative have the wider footprint across the southeast region. So I want to formally thank the people in Hampshire that we said goodbye to. I spoke to one of them last week, and they're thriving, doing really well, and miss us, so a bit of both really, which was really nice to hear. I started in the NHS in 1986 as a volunteer, and then I became a healthcare assistant in 1990 before training to be a nurse. And the one thing I know about the many years that I've worked in the NHS is that the NHS is constantly changing. It never sits still. Some people find it difficult, whereas other people thrive with change, and we need to support all the people that are along the spectrum when there's change. Personally, my drive for continuous improvement in quality means that change is inevitable. And we see this across the trust and our local systems and the NHS as a whole. My experience is, though, that the pace, scale and complexity of change that we're dealing with now is tangibly different. It does feel different. People always say change is always here, but it does feel different. And it is across the NHS. It's with our acute partners, our community partners, with our social care partners, with our voluntary sector, with everyone. And then we've got service users who are managing austerity, they're managing housing crisis, and they're managing all sorts of other stressors within the country. So it does feel like things are different. We have numerous sites, and I try and visit them. I try and get out once a week, but with over 100 sites, it would take me 2 years to get everywhere. So I never get everywhere that I want to get. But what I am struck by is when I'm out in services, about the sheer passion and commitment people have, our staff have to patients. And I'm absolutely delighted that I've got such a strong workforce that we can build the future on. You'll see throughout our annual account and the presentation here, we've pulled out some of the things that we're doing, but it is a small snippet of things that are happening in the trust. And I like to think I only know a small margin of what's happening in this trust. But when you go digging, you hear more and more great things that are happening, and you're going to hear two really, really strong examples with strong outcomes later on. I'd never be able to put everything up there, and I'd never do them justice. And I'm not going to talk about any of these individually right now, because you can read about them in the annual report. But during the year, we revisited the NHS's triple aim of population health, service quality, and sustainable and efficient use of resources, and began a large-scale transformation, a large-scale change, where we are changing our leadership structures, our service structures, and our care pathways. This is not significant at all. This is not insignificant. Insignificant, sorry. And as I said, inevitably, people will be affected by the change. And as I said, people experience change in different ways. They find it energizing and exciting, and they find it difficult and daunting, or they might actually find both. Different times. That's certainly where I sit. Sometimes I'm really excited and really looking forward to the future and the exciting changes, and then I think, oh my goodness, there's a lot to do. So I think that sort of balancing those two things can be really challenging, but this is what we're going through as an organisation. The key question to ask is why we're changing, though. We're not changing for the sake of it. We're changing so that we can be clinically led, we can be quality assured, operationally managed and financially sustainable. We need to balance our finances with quality and not let one overtake the other, but also understand that having good financial grip is good quality. And I know Isman, where is Isman? I just saw him out there. I know Isman will talk about that when he talks about the accounts later, about the importance of quality in the finances. But for me, change is about continuously striving to improve. It's about building on our achievements, and it's about being open about doing things different and better for patients, carers and communities we serve. It's also important to be clear that where we want to get a result changed, we do it because I said that wrong way around. We're not doing change for the sake of doing change. We're doing change because we want to see things significantly better. And from my perspective, our ambition for change as SPFT means a number of things. Firstly, and more importantly, it's about being an organisation that delivers high quality care services that's safe, effective and a good experience, and one that is continuously improving and has a relentless focus on improvement. It means being a good system player. And it means working with partners. Sometimes it might mean that we have to give to our partners. Sometimes we might be the beneficiary, but it means working together, being open and transparent with what we're doing for the population as a whole, not for SPFT on its own. And that's a move, I think, in the NHS, of moving to think about population health rather than just who we see and walk through the door. And I think that will enable us to deliver the Improving Lives Together strategy for the ICB. It means continuing the work of the NHS, the core work of the NHS, seeing people at the point of need, and really being responsive to them. It also means being responsive to that population need and contributing to the strategic development. We've achieved a lot in 23-24 on all fronts, but there's more to do, and we have many challenges ahead of us. All that said, I do feel excited, optimistic and energised about what's ahead of us. But I don't think we can do it on our own. We need to be constantly working with our partners, like our partners at Downs Link, at YMCA and South. I don't know why I had a mental block there. I think it's because it's Downs Link and South Down. I thought maybe I'd got it wrong. But we need to be working in a different way and being flexible about the way we work. We've got some great partners. I want to end by thanking the non-exec directors and the board for their support, and thank our staff. We couldn't do this without our people. They're absolutely brilliant, from corporate support services right the way through to front office, front-facing clinical services, to every department across the trust. We've got some fantastic staff. I want to thank our partners across the system, and most of all, I want to thank our patients and carers who I want to thank them for their honesty when we get things right, and honestly when we don't get things right, and give you our commitment to relentlessly focus on improving our services and listening to you. It's been a challenging year, but 23-24 has given us a firm foundation to continuously improve, and I'm really looking forward to walking with you all into the future.
It's very long. Colin, would like to come and join us and take us through our strategy plans.
First of all, it's lovely to be here today and to see so many people. So for those that don't know me, I'm Colin Hicks. I'm the Chief Strategy and Partnerships Officer for the organisation. And I've had what I genuinely feel is the privilege of working with lots and lots of different people to look at the development of our strategy from 2025 to 2030. So this is just going to sort of be a brief update to everyone in terms of where we are, in terms of the development of the new organisational sort of strategy and the journey that we're kind of currently on and taking to kind of achieve that. So right from the start, Jane set us out a real ambition to make sure that as we developed a strategy, we did this through the principles of co-production, engaging as many people as possible. So we deliberately set ourselves a timeline of just over a year to achieve this, to make sure that we were able to walk through sequentially in steps so that everyone could feel as engaged as possible, right from the sort of the initial phases of kind of gathering views of the organisation, through to thinking about actually how do we want to develop it, how do we want the strategy to feel, and ultimately what do we want to look at it at the end. Our commitment is that in doing this, what we don't end up with is something that is nice to do, sits on a shelf and drives absolutely nothing for the next 5 years, but something that feels like it's a living, breathing document that really helps inform the decisions that we make, whether those are at the level of a board, a level of a team, and also influence absolutely everyone who works for us. So at the moment, just in terms of kind of where we're at, so we're currently at that sort of strategy kind of development phase, having done a huge amount of work, which I'll just very briefly talk through, in terms of really understanding the organisation, doing kind of a diagnostic piece of work, and then really doing quite a large piece of engagement as well. So the reason for us to do this, partly, yes, our strategy is due to expire, but also I think we need to recognise that the economy that we're in at the moment is very different to the one that we started with the original strategy. We know that there are some huge external pressures, and we're still seeing the kind of the bubble of mental health needs that followed the pandemic. We've got challenges in terms of demand, the financial realities that we're working with, a level of dissatisfaction that kind of encompasses the whole of the NHS, and some real operational challenges and gaps that we need to address as an organisation. Our aim in doing this, though, is that we want to have a strategy that's really clear, sets a very defined direction for us as an organisation. One of the things that we've heard time and time again through a lot of the engagement work is a desire for partners, for staff that work for us, and people who receive our services to just have real clarity in terms of what is it you're here to do and how are you going to help me? We want this to be ambitious. We don't want to write something that is about just kind of maintaining the status quo for the next 5 years. But we need to, you know, in respect of all the citizens of Sussex, set something that's really kind of ambitious for the next 5 years. What are the improvements that we would seek to see? And we need to do this in a really kind of collaborative way. There's absolutely no point us writing a strategy in the dark on our own if we haven't engaged the staff that work for us, if we haven't engaged people who experience and use our services, carers and families, and if we haven't done this with our kind of wider partners as well. This slide just basically sort of summarises the journey that we've taken so far, and it definitely feels as wibbly as it currently looks. So first thing we did was developed a real sort of state of the nation deep dive. So what does the data tell us about our organisation and our kind of sort of position? How do we benchmark? What's the feedback that we get, whether that's through staff surveys, community mental health surveys, etc. We also did a huge piece of engagement work, and I have to say that I was genuinely humbled by the amount of time people gave up to engage with us. So we received well over 3,000 responses from people, whether that was staff, different conversations with different system partners, survey responses online, engagement in some incredibly vibrant sort of strategy roadshows that we held across the whole of the county. What that's done is it's given us a huge wealth of information and intelligence that we're in the process of sort of crystallizing to really think about what is going to be our vision, our purpose, our mission, and our values going forwards. What is it that our strategic objectives are really going to sort of set for us? So the phase that we're in now takes us from here up until Christmas, where we're really doing that kind of refinement piece, testing it back out with everyone to say, this is what we're here to do. This is where we add value in the system. This is where we work really well with our partners. So in terms of sort of where we've landed thus far, so Jane mentioned we have the ICS strategy about improving lives together. So we need to be really clear and explicit about how, as an organisation, our strategy docks into or contributes to the overarching ICS strategy, but also thinking about the synergies with other organisational strategies that are being developed across the system, whether that's with our NHS partners, whether that's with our voluntary sector partners, or indeed local authorities as well. So we've said, and this came to board last time, that we would like our vision to be about delivering great care and improving outcomes together, because we feel that that really kind of encapsulates both the aim to deliver great care, but why are we trying to deliver great care? Because it's the outcomes that we want to see improvements in. Underpinning that, we talked about our purpose as being 3 things. One is about being really explicit about us as a provider within the within the sort of system. So recognising that we provide mental health, learning disability services in Sussex, but very much in collaboration with patients, carers and families. And recognising that we have a real specialist role, we're a specialist trust. So actually, how do we make sure we play to our strengths? You'll notice at the moment that there isn't anything that relates to neurodevelopmental disorders, neurodiversity on there. We've still got to work out a way of kind of weaving that through. So it's not an omission. It's a case of actually we're still working with partners to be really clear about what's our role and how do we really add value. The second part of our purpose very much lends itself to that idea about we're a collaborator. We will only be successful as much as we can work well with our partners. So we really need to be very clear about what does that mean when it comes to sort of all of our kind of different stakeholders, and recognising that the biggest piece of collaboration we can ever do is with the people who use our services. We also recognise ourselves as being leaders. So we do hold expertise and experience to help provide leadership both within the organisation, but also within and across the system. But that doesn't mean that when we talk about our expertise, other people don't have any. We bring our piece of the pie, but we know that people with lived experience are the experts of their experiences. And we know that our partners all bring equally valuable kind of contributions. We've had lots of conversation about the values that we want to see our organisation really kind of embody going forwards. We've had 3, we've had 8, we've had 7, we've had 12. But we were really clear that we wanted to land on 3 that were meaningful to everyone in the organisation. and really sort of, I guess, in kind of encapsulated the values that we wanted to kind of see and to experience, and think about how that also then translates into behaviour subsequently. So our focus of our values, so one is about compassion. When we did all the stakeholder work, compassion came through so strongly, so loudly. The second is about being accountable. And that's about being accountable to each other, about a level of professionalism within which we operate. But it's also about being accountable to our partners and to people who use our services, that we will deliver what we say that we're going to deliver. We will be trustworthy, we will be reliable, and we will be effective. And one that was a really interesting kind of sort of one that sort of came through as well was about being optimistic. It's a really difficult time at the moment for people who work in this sector. I think there's a danger that you could just sort of say, you know, kind of keep your head down, let's just get through it and survive. But we didn't want this strategy to be one of survival. We wanted us to sort of take what is a really challenging environment and really leverage the benefits of that kind of burning platform, so that we're really able to kind of sort of deliver positive change for the future. So all the way through this, we want to remain optimistic. We recognise that there are a number of different challenges that face us as an organisation. We had some really honest conversations that were incredibly valuable to us with staff and with partners about what are some of the particular challenges people want to see us address through the development of this strategy. So when you see it sort of being developed, it will sit underneath these five key areas. So there's something for us about how as an organisation are we more effective? How can we build more agile to work with partners? How are we ensuring that we are sustainable, but also that kind of constant seeking of improvement all the time? We're not always effective in collaboration. We can sometimes say it, and the words come out really well as a board, but actually we need that to permeate all the way through our teams, our organisation, so that it becomes part of our DNA. And I still think there's a lot of work for us to do to really look at how we do that. We've got some challenges around our workforce. We're not shying away from that. We're no different to other organisations. But what we want to do is to think about how do we sort of really set our organisation aside so that people feel like they want to come and work with us because we're known for doing things well. We still have quite a long way to go to move away from a very traditional model of delivering services to the masses to really understanding the impact in terms of kind of population health and health inequality. So it's not just delivering services, but how do we know that we're targeting them to our most vulnerable communities across the whole of sort of Sussex? And we know that we've still got quite significant variation in some of the quality of our services, partly because of some historic commissioning arrangements, partly though because we've actually got to really start looking at us as an organisation and thinking about how do we ensure that we have variation where it is warranted, but we also have consistency as the kind of the core to it. So just in terms of kind of sort of next steps. So we're at this kind of sort of time point, if you like, now where we are sort of determining, we're refining and developing sort of the strategy. There are engagement events still happening and conversations between now and December when we bring the final version through to board for agreement. All the information around the development is on our intranet, it's on our website as well. But critically for me, December when we get it signed, well, hopefully get it signed up for the board. Critically for me, that's not the end point, because actually that's the point at which we really have to gear up and start thinking about how do we then start to use this in a way that starts to think about that kind of deployment piece. And we're talking about that a lot at the moment in terms of the delivery of our strategy should also be about how we become an organisation that embraces and embodies continuous improvement all the time. So there'll be a lot of activity through that sort of January through kind of April period to really start thinking about what does this mean in terms of year one deliverables. And then the last thing just to kind of sort of leave you with as well is that we did quite a lot of kind of sort of engagement and feedback work around our visual identity and the importance of that as well. And I think there's kind of quite a lot of feedback around people being able to kind of really clearly identify with the colour branding that we've currently got at the moment, but also thinking about actually if we're trying to recognise a sort of a step change of improvement, actually how might we want to kind of sort of look at the organisation differently and how might we want to use colour as a way of embodying that kind of principle around sort of optimism. So Dan with the kind of comms team and some brilliant guys in that team are doing a fantastic job in terms of starting to do or looking at what are some of those options around how we might want to to see our kind of sort of visual identity kind of going forwards. But there's a huge amount of work going on. Hopefully that's a comprehensive whistle-stop kind of sort of tour. Just leaves me to just sort of say, first of all, thank you to, you know, obviously the 3,000 plus people who've engaged with us. It's been absolutely phenomenal. And I do have to do a bit of a shout out to Jenny and Naomi and my team, who are just stoically leading this through the whole of the year. They're doing an absolutely kind of phenomenal job. But please do stay engaged with us on the journey. Please stay engaged with us on the journey. It is really, really important. Thanks, Sean.
It's a very complicated, it's quite a complex organisation. It's a complicated environment, which, you know, we need to be put into, you know, cut to the chase and focus our energies, commitment to some priorities going into the future. And we will. One of Colin's fears is that we'll do all this work and then it's on a shelf, and that won't happen. The reason why I know it will happen is we didn't allow that to happen last time round. But also, I'm working closely with our non-executive director colleagues and the Council of Governors, and they won't allow that to happen. And that's our job, you know, is to question and to challenge in a positive, constructive way, so we can make sure that we agree the strategy with all your 3,000 people. That's extremely impressive. Anyway, we're moving on to some exciting pieces of work we're doing. Chris Harris, a colleague, well, I've known you on the national circuit. You know, housing and mental health was it's always been a priority, but we've not really known what to do about it. And we're looking around, you know, at the national level, we're looking around for people to take the lead on this. Actually, the NHS Development, we did a little bit of leadership on that. And it was great to see some organisations like Sussex Partnership does have a focus around housing and mental health, so we can identify the models that work and then try to help with our pressures in the system. And the good thing about you, Chris, is you're working with Jane, and we've got a joint presentation with the local authority and the NHS, which is what we want to see in action. Chris. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Sean, and hi everyone. I'm Chris Harris, our Associate Director of Housing. Well, these things, I'm not listening, and I'm not hearing any report. Is there a way of someone skipping that to the right one whilst I talk? Just keep going.
Just keep left click, go through it. They've put, I think, I don't know why the annual accounts quite in that order. There you go.
Yes, so thank you for that kind of introduction. So I'm going to talk to you about one specific example of how over the last couple of years we've been creating new housing roles based within our adult mental health teams, and hopefully give some examples around the impact that we're seeing in this space, particularly as we help prevent people from losing their accommodation, but also help people to secure new accommodation. It's very much a partnership-based focus. So really pleased to have Jane with us today from a district council point of view, from our district council. There's lots of other partners in this space as well. It'd be really good to hear our partner perspective from Jane. I think as you said, Sean, in the introduction, the national space on this has been maybe to some extent interested, but slightly confused of how to take things forward over the last few years. And we're probably coming at this from a space where traditionally housing services are commissioned, designed, delivered in one place in local systems, and adult mental health and care services are delivered, commissioned, designed in different parts of the system. Our housing team, I'm going to talk to you about, and the roles we put into our teams are really part of a local programme of strategic work that we've taken forward in Sussex over the last few years. And we wanted to sort of make headroom in this space because of a few key things. First and foremost, we recognise that having a good place to live in, having a good quality home, is an absolutely key fundamental part of people's mental health outcomes, mental health, emotional well-being outcomes as well. On the flip side of that, conversely, if you don't have good quality accommodation, if you don't have somewhere that you can home, if indeed you may be homeless, this will have an undoubted impact on your mental health, and will have a knock-on impact in terms of your in terms of the local health and care systems that are maybe supporting you. In Sussex as well, I think in the southeast of England, we're in a place where access to accommodation is incredibly difficult. We know that we live in a particularly heated private rented sector market. It's incredibly unaffordable at times for people to access accommodation. So we kind of have this contextual position as well. We've put this together in a partnership over the last few years. Sorry, move close to the mic, wasn't that? Thank you. Very much in partnership. We are engaging with our key partners in the local authorities here. This isn't just our social care authorities, and as Jane did from the local district borough authorities, we have 13 housing authorities in Sussex, and the colour-coded map there shows the local housing authorities in Sussex, the local housing authorities being responsible for housing allocation, homelessness, so really key partners of the state. The Trust currently co-leads the delivery of a mental health and housing programme, and John, our Chief Operating Officer, co-leads this and wants this alongside our NHS Sussex and partners. And we have a number of strategic objectives behind this that is trying to be delivered through our programme. Creating the housing team and housing specialists I'll talk to you about are one strand within this work. And we have other elements here around how we try and develop supported accommodation services for people using mental health services, how we think about creating transitional step down and step up models, how we think about strategic commissioning, matching demand and supply of specialist supported housing services, and developing very sort of bespoke supported housing models for people under particular pathways such as our rehab pathway. So in terms of housing expertise itself, as you will see from the picture there, we've got 13 of these local housing authorities in Sussex. Housing is a complex system. We wanted to try and embed housing expertise within our system because it is a difficult thing to navigate. It takes a special type of skill set. There is a whole host of legislation, policy, practice that's quite unique to housing as a distinct profession. And within our adult mental health systems, we don't naturally have this. We don't always have housing practitioners, people with expertise that can be called upon when required. People using our services since developing this programme have always consistently said to us as well that having accommodation and having access to housing advice and support in their teams is a really key feature of something that they want. When we started this work, when we started this with interviews with people using our inpatient mental health services, something that was really commonly said, a sort of phrase that quite a few people mentioned to me when talking to people at the very start of this journey, was that they felt as though they were often being pushed from pillar to post, that you were given maybe advice, recognition that you have a housing problem, but ultimately signposted to go and talk to different departments, call different numbers, talk to different services, try and get some support for that. And people reported that they felt as though they were kind of in the middle, stuck in this, in the middle between professional housing services here and mental health care and support services here. People were saying to us that they wanted housing to be part of our multidisciplinary team offer, to be a kind of key tool in that toolbox that we can draw on when required. Another key reason why we wanted to think about housing expertise and getting this into our teams was that we were really seeing this having an impact on our health and care services. So homelessness is a really common pre-admission stressor. We have a very high number of housing related to late discharge. And again, at the start of this work, when we went to interview people and audit wards and think about where we were seeing this from an inpatient perspective, when we first started this work, 30% of people using our inpatient services were technically homeless. So really a third of people using our inpatient adult mental health teams were homeless. That doesn't mean that people were rough sleeping and kind of homeless that night. Homeless can mean many things. It included people who might be rough sleeping, but also who might be facing a parental eviction, who might be just recently had a relationship breakdown, unable to return to their accommodation, who may be sofa surfing, who may be maybe just lost supported accommodation. But either way, they're homeless in our mental health inpatient settings. So over the last year or so, we've tried to address this by working closely, particularly with our local authority partners, by co-producing and creating new specialist housing roles that are based in our adult mental health teams. We've termed these housing specialists, and these are people who have an expertise in kind of housing related matters. And we've embedded these with our local authority partners. So whilst the Trust has recruited these workers and we kind of line manage them, they take referrals from our patients, our services, these are staff who are formally co-located with our local authority partners. So we have formal partnerships there whereby professional supervision, access to shared IT services, training, development plans, etc., are in place. So we have workers with a foot in both camps, working in our services, also working with our local housing authorities across Sussex. hand over, Jane, to you to give us a bit of an overview of how things are working.
Thanks, Chris. For you that don't know me, I'm Jane Knight, I'm the Housing Options Manager at Arran District Council, and we were one of the 3 initial authorities who had the co-located worker within our authority. So it's had many positive outcomes for clients, this role. It allows for improved communication between the 2 teams, quicker discharges back home, and the ability to identify potential housing issues for a patient early into an admission, which reduces the bed blocking and improves accommodation options for a patient. So for housing options, it means we have a resource to help us identify correctly and efficiently a client's mental health history and treatment plan, and that assists with the decision about whether the housing options team may owe a client an accommodation duty on discharge. The role can also help prevent clients becoming homeless by safeguarding their accommodation. An example of this good practice is a case we had earlier this year. So an Arran District Council tenant was bed blocking in hospital. She had a tenancy, but she was unable to return home due to the condition of the property, which was full of rubbish and really cluttered. So the housing specialist arranged for a company to go into the client's home, clear the rubbish and clutter over a couple of days. She safeguarded the possessions the client wished to retain and supervised access for workers and ensured the property was cleaned and ready for the client to return to. By doing this huge piece of work, the client could be discharged safely home from hospital, freeing the bed for another patient, and ensuring that the client's tenancy was no longer at risk due to the hoarding in the property. So this joint working across both teams produced a positive outcome for everybody involved in this case. I can only honestly sing the praises of the workers that we've had. We've had 2, and they both produce amazing work and work continuously hard to produce really positive outcomes for our joint clients. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. It's been amazing working with Jane and colleagues from the start of this process, and I think it really has to be said. It's something that's done together. I don't think it would work if it was just something we're doing. So thank you, Jane, for your help, and for other local authorities in particular who helped us with it. A quick sort of overview of the outcomes. I've got lots of sort of data around this, but the headline outcomes is we've had nearly, I think when we took this data in July, we had nearly 700 people use one of these housing workers across our services in Sussex, and a very highly significant number of people were seeing a significant improvement in their housing circumstances and situation. We were measuring this around security and tenure. So this is effectively housing speak for the legal rights and the strength of your legal rights to be in your accommodation. And we've seen that people referred in at the point of entry to service versus people coming out of the service on exit, over 90% of people's housing situation is improving. And this also corresponds to what people have told us in feedback and experience surveys that we've run when people are exiting services. Most of the people we're using, around about reason service, around about 50% of people are being supported to secure new accommodation, and around about a quarter we're preventing them to stay in their own home, sort of preventing them from losing their home. I think the target for our team over the next few years is to really try and work on that prevention number, and where we try to sort of put these workers have been in our acute inpatient settings, but we want to try and get that as far into the community settings as we can over the next year, and ideally bring that prevention number up so that we are supporting people to stay in their own home, getting in there early, as opposed to ultimately trying to resolve a problem once it's happened. Really significant return on investment from our point of view as well, and the finance team have helped us work out some calculations around this, that a £1 investment on this in 23-24 was generating a £5 outcome, and this was all associated with the ability to reduce our housing related delays to discharge quite significantly, and ultimately then turn off independent sector inpatient beds. I'll leave you very quickly with this slide that just sort of shows that, maybe too much detail for full scrutiny in this meeting, but just quickly showing that those yellow bars are housing related delays to discharge. We're running at around about 800 to 1,000 bed days being delayed every month prior to our housing team starting in October 22. As Jay said, we had 3 of those staff members at that point, We now have a still small but a team working across those 13 housing authorities. And as we brought staff in, you can see that our housing related delays of discharge have really plummeted below our target of getting those below 10% of all our discharges in 23 of our delays in 23-24, and ultimately on track to getting that down even further this year. The bed days are one component of this, and I think it's really important. I just want to sort of sign off by saying that whilst there is clearly a business impact around reducing delays to discharge, it's the human impact that we're being told from people using our services every day, that by having this type of expertise within our teams, we have a different, more holistic way of providing care and support to people using our services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great to see the party in action, program of work in action, human impact. I highly agree. Let's go straight on to shelter case. And transforming care in Dawn Howard, clinical psychologist, I believe. Good, yeah. Forward to this.
Thank you. Left click. Hello everybody, I'm Dawn Howard. I'm thinking what our adult here. A bit shorter. So yeah, our adult neurodevelopment service, our adult autism ADHD diagnostic service, and our transforming care autism team, TCAPS, which I'm going to talk to you about now. It's a great privilege for some great colleagues in our service, so privileged to talk about their work. So as a result of the transforming care agenda, in 2018 we were asked to design a team to provide additional specific assessments and consultation to support discharge and avoid admission for autistic adults and young people. We were operational in September 2019, and the first 2 years we were funded with NHS England funding. Our key performance indicator was to avoid 10 admissions per year, and that was estimated to lead to savings of 1.8 million. And we surpassed that KPI every year. In 2023, we completed work with 66 individuals. And our key outcome headline is 86% of people remaining out of hospital at 1 year follow-up. So who do we work with? We work with young people across Sussex, aged 14 plus, and adults. They need to have a formal diagnosis of autism before being referred to us and be at high risk of admission to a mental health hospital or an inpatient ready for discharge. And they need to be open to another SPFD team, so we only accept referrals from within the trust. And typically, people referred to us are presenting with high levels of complex risk to themselves and others, severe self-harm, suicidality, and we see people with eating disorders and complex trauma. And often the people we see have had long histories using our services and often multiple admissions. So this, I'll tell you a bit about our outcomes and how we measured them. We looked at a cohort of 36 people that we saw in 22-23 and looked on the notes to count up the number of inpatient bed days they'd had in the 12 months prior to TCAP working with them and compared that with the 12 months after we'd finished work. And I can't see that slide with my glasses. So as you can see, the total number of bed days for those 36 people was 4,824 in that 12-month period before. In that 12 months after TCAP had worked with them, it was 1,996, and that represents an average of 69% reduction in bed days. And when we checked in May 2024, we looked at that cohort on care notes, and 86% of them remained out on inpatient bed. We also complete HONOS scores pre and post TCAP working with somebody, and they are averaging around 85% improvement in HONOS scores. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about our clinical model.
We are a multidisciplinary assessment and consultation team that work alongside the person's existing network. Our team comprises of OTs, speech and language therapists, clinical psychologists and therapy assistants. We're a very small team, around 7 whole-time equivalents at the moment. And one of the key things that we've learned over the past few years is that presenting risks we often see in the people referred to us, often a result of not having had post-diagnostic support that enables a positive neuroaffirmative identity and gives the person strategies to navigate life. So the first thing we offer most people is a collaborative exploration of all aspects of their neurodiversity using our autism care plan tool. This can take several sessions and is usually completed by one of our therapy assistants. This process helps identify strategies the person can use and the supports and reasonable adjustments that are needed to reduce risk. For some people, we may go on to offer additional specialist assessments such as sensory assessment or communication assessment. We then bring that new understanding together and develop a collaborative risk formulation with the network and the individual to integrate that new understanding around the individual's autism and ADHD into the risk formulation and care plans. For people who may need a package of care, we may make specific recommendations about what's needed using a placement profile to support successful discharge. We have a small peer support resource in the wider service, which some of our TCAP patients have accessed. Our peer support worker provides a positive role model and brings hope that life can get easier and shares strategies that she's found helpful. So what makes a difference with our TCAP input? When we bring our autism lens, it provides a different framework through which to understand preventing risk, such as the impact of masking your autistic identity, differences in interoception, and some of the poorly understood physical health conditions that commonly co-occur in autism. Patients often tell us when they work in TCAP, it's the first time they felt understood and had their experience validated. This is particularly their experience with peer support or one of our neurodivergent clinicians. That peer connection reduces the feelings of isolation and being a burden that can contribute to suicidality. We are a consultation team, not a standalone MDT, so it's key that we work collaboratively with the network so that they understand the individual's autism needs and recommendations are carried forward in care plans. Very often we've seen people who may have an emotionally unstable personality disorder diagnosis that they haven't found helpful, and autism and ADHD has provided a more helpful understanding and indicated effective strategies to manage risk. Being able to differentiate autism from mental health diagnoses can be helpful, as sometimes we see people where there is, for example, OCD or trauma that's been overshadowed by autism diagnosis and treatment hasn't been offered as a result. And when we're involved at the point of discharge to a new package of care, we can provide training to the community provider, which is bespoke to that individual. And that support increases the likelihood of placement success. So these are a few of our challenges. There is still enough supported living placements that can meet the particular needs of the group of people that we see. You can have a particularly mixed profile of needs. And there's still a variability and an up-to-date understanding of autism and ADHD in our colleagues, and the pressures on teams make it harder for our colleagues to put into place our recommendations. One of the things we've seen in TCAT is that the majority of the people that we see, as well as having an autism diagnosis, also have an ADHD diagnosis or are awaiting an ADHD diagnosis. And often, when people access ADHD medication, that can be a key factor in risk reduction. So when patients can't access ADHD medication, that limits our impact and outcomes. So our figures suggest that around 50% of people in our adult inpatient beds are either diagnosed autistic or awaiting autism or ADHD diagnosis. So how do we maximise the impact of our small team? We use the analogy of making autism and ADHD the first bus stop in an individual care journey rather than the last bus stop. In TCAP, we've often seen the result of autism being the last bus stop, and as a result of it not being recognised, resources are wasted on ineffective pathways and avoidable admission. We see a huge need for training our colleagues to use the understanding and approaches and developed to benefit a wider number of autistic individuals across the trust. We did provide some training in COVID in 2020, 21 and 22. We trained all of our inpatient colleagues, but it needs to be an ongoing process. And linking on from what Chris has been saying, many of our patients require a bespoke package of care, and this takes time to set up. An autism-friendly step-out unit would enable discharge of those patients who are ready but waiting for a package of care into an environment where they can remain stabilised. Another sense, our outcomes are often limited by the capacity in our diagnostic pathways, and this nationwide challenge needs system-wide response so people can access diagnostic assessment in the pathways where they present, be it primary, secondary, or inpatient care. The scale of the referral numbers we're seeing for diagnosis indicate that autism and ADHD can't remain the sole responsibility of specialist services. It has to be everybody's business. Thank you.